From pulling off an entire match on the back of suffering a sickening injury early on, to wrestling veterans falling victim to a dreaded variable atop a dizzyingly high cage. Brace yourselves, because these entries certainly are not for the faint-hearted. Honest old Gareth here from WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestling moments more terrifying when you know the truth. Number 10. Sting nearly goes off the edge. WCW Monday Nitro 1997. Stinger's first zip wire assisted leap very nearly went disastrously wrong. Upon testing out his first ever rappelling from the rafters sequence for Nitro, Sting was quick to note it was scary. Sting was so unnerved by the idea of dropping down 140 feet from the sky after only rehearsing the scenario 4 times beforehand and spinning out consistently that he actually told Eric Bischoff he could not do it. After being ultimately talked back onto the ledge, however, it would later come to light that just as Sting was set to descend, the wrestler and stunt workers realized they actually had the kit set up backwards. With the tragic incident involving a similar stunt and Owen Hart still yet to come to pass, Sting would admit that had they not quickly fixed the problem, if I'd stepped over and done it, the same thing that happened to Owen would have happened to me. Number 9. Batista and Triple H let loose with 0 rehearsals. WWE WrestleMania 35. Taking to the grandest stage in a high-profile contest is the sort of scenario that has been known to leave even the most experienced in-ring workers nursing a sizable amount of jitters. So combine that with the fact neither iconic wrestler involved was what you class as a full-time worker, and it's fair to say Triple H and Batista had every right to be a tad nervous heading into their extended slobber knocker. However, with the game just recently returning from a torn pec, neither star was actually given the chance to ease their anxiety leading into their showing. So in the end, the two wouldn't actually touch one another until the night itself, with everything from nose ring yankings to intense announce table bumps all being executed without a lick of practice from the two legends who hadn't collided in one-on-one action in nearly 15 years. A set of pros, I tell you. Number 8. Wheeler Yuta takes on Jon Moxley whilst blind. AEW Rampage 2022. When agreeing to stand across the ring from a wrestler who is literally known as the purveyor of violence, anything but 100% of your focus and commitment to the Jon Moxley cause will likely quickly result in a rather nightmarish scenario. Unfortunately, that's something eventual Blackpool Combat Club ally Wheeler Yuta discovered rather brutally during his breakout bloodbath with the 2022 AEW MVP on the April 8th edition of Rampage. After inevitably producing some color in the gritty showing, Yuta soon realized just how damn difficult it is to keep up with the relentlessly vicious Mox when sporting a crimson mask. In fact, things got so tough for the plucky underdog that he eventually admitted to not being able to see anything and even feeling somewhat blind during the war. Thankfully, Yuta would at least land on the semi-effective solution of wiping one part of his eye to the point of being able to just about work the contest. But there is a reason he earned the BCC's respect that night. Number 7. Shane McMahon was legit KO'd in front of his own kids. WWE Survivor Series 2016. Hot on the heels of Shane O'Mac being violently reminded to calm the F down by Chris Jericho, earlier in the traditional 5-on-5 elimination contest, the Daredevil figure would eat a huge spear mid-coast to coast from Roman Reigns. Shane's vacant expression and the official's look of worry as he called for the SmackDown leader's sudden elimination already told a story of Sugar Honey Iced Tea hitting the fans somewhat. But the horror was dialed up a few notches when it eventually became clear that McMahon's own kids were actually on the front row. Thankfully, Randy Orton was on hand to console Shane's little ones shortly after, with Orton later noting on Twitter, "I'm a father, I know what it's like to have your kids ringside when shh goes sideways." Number 6. Kurt Angle can't remember his epic match. WWE SummerSlam 2000. Angle's sheer grit and determination left the Olympic hero with next to no memory of one of his most dramatic evenings within a WWE ring, with the original plan being for Angle to work being knocked out early on in his contest with Triple H and The Rock at SummerSlam 2000. After being put through a table by the former, Angle ended up being legit KO'd by said announced Des Pedigree. And upon rewatching the contest that saw him return to the action despite nursing a heavy concussion, the Hall of Famer would note, "You could tell I was completely out of it. You could tell they were calling spots to me. If you look very closely, I don't have any recollection of the match." The fact Angle was effortlessly letting loose belly to bellies and eating rock bottoms when he should have been safely lying in a hospital bed is as frightening as it is astounding in hindsight. Number 5. Jeff Hardy is done with the ear stuff after one particular spot. WWE Clash of Champions 2020. Coming in the midst of Jeff Hardy's odd ear-torturing phase whilst under the WWE banner, the charismatic enigma eventually decided enough was enough on the back of a rather intense ladder match at 2020's Clash of Champions. Seen during a behind-the-scenes clip captured in the wake of the chaotic Intercontinental Championship triple threat, the former WWE champion would admit the cringe-inducing spot that saw him dragged to the ground by a ladder his stretched earlobe was attached to was just about the final straw for him. As Hardy would confess, "I'm about done with the ear stuff because when that ladder fell, it felt like it ripped my whole, oh man, God, it felt like it was crazy. Then I was just trying to support it. I'm a madman." This sort of ear trauma was enough to leave even the hardcore legend sensing he'd gone a touch too far. Number 4, Ric Flair was in no condition to be anywhere near a wrestling ring. Ric Flair's last match 2022. Very few were confident about the idea of a 73-year-old Ric Flair throwing down under the bright lights at the most recent StarCast weekend. And despite surprising with his ability to just about hold his own with training partner and eventual final bout rival Jay Lethal online, Flair's comments of having a nagging foot injury coming into the contest, it quickly became clear that Flair should have been absolutely nowhere near a squared circle on the night of his last match itself. Then, in the wake of being busted open, Flair found himself struggling to stay on his feet in the closing stages, with the former WCW and WWE star even being spotted telling Andrade, "I passed out," once he'd slumped to a figure 4 victory. With Flair also noting in his post-match promo that he didn't remember half of what had just went down, it's evident Nature's disturbing last stand shouldn't have been given the green light in the first place. Number 3, The Undertaker was 2 inches away from making his wife a widow. WWE Super Showdown 2019. In the wake of disappointing in showdowns against Roman Reigns, Rusev, and D-Generation X, The Undertaker was clearly hell-bent on going out on a contest he was truly proud of. His hard-to-watch Battle of the Icons with Goldberg at Super Showdown 2019 was not that match, however, with Goldberg knocking himself silly before even setting foot into the squared circle that night. A second knock to the head thanks to colliding with the ring post set the stage for a rather frightening spot. Not long after that botch, the Man would proceed to attempt a jackhammer on the Dead Man, which nearly resulted in Taker landing on his head. And as the battered phenom himself would admit in the Last Ride docuseries, "I was 2 inches away from making my wife a widow and my kids fatherless." Thankfully, his final bouts refrained from putting the legend in this sort of dangerous scenario again, but there's no denying how badly things could have actually turned out for this Hall of Famer had a concussed Goldberg landed him in an even more awkward position. Number 2, Gangrel genuinely thought he was gonna die. WWF Monday Night Raw 1999. Another deeply unsettling spot involving The Undertaker left one rather notable Brood member genuinely thinking they reached the end of the road on a 1999 edition of Monday Night Raw. With Gangrel battling it out with the Ministry alongside his fellow Brood mates on February 1st Red Show, the interference of the APA soon led to the fanged figure being horrifically hung up by a rope as Taker ominously watched on. However, as Gangrel himself would later explain, the act of genuinely being dangled outside of the ring with his neck gripped in the brand new rope left him realizing that he could be about to meet his maker. In his own words, "Boogers were out of my nose, belly was pushed out, I said goodbye to the world, I made peace with God." In the end, Dennis Knight, aka Midian, was able to save Gangrel from a grisly fate by helping take some pressure off his neck. Number 1, Chris Jericho's spin was taken up a notch by Thumbtacks, AEW Blood and Guts 2022. Instead of being the one to fall to his doom this time around, the champion opted to go for a terrifying swing atop the cell during his latest Blood and Guts showing. Yet, as the former AEW World Champion would later admit, what initially seemed like a fairly safe and simple spot soon ended up leaving him a little worse for wear. On the back of the thumbtacks used earlier in the contest providing him with boots that made it feel as though he was walking on ice, it soon dawned on Jericho mid-Claudio Castagnoli spin that he was actually in a far more dangerous scenario than he initially thought. 3 spins in, the Wizard confessed that he started begging, "Stop, stop, stop, stop," and while Jericho would later note how safe he clearly was in Claudio's hands, the aforementioned thumbtack variable actually influenced the JAS leader's decision to spend much of his time atop the cell on his knees due to the all-round lack of traction. As this list will show, wrestling's biggest company has a long and spiteful history of belittling and endangering its employees to satisfy the often cruel whims of the people in charge. I am Gareth here from WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 horribly cruel WWE moments worse when you know the truth. Number 10. WWE motivate Jeff Hardy with pictures of his dead dog. Considering how much of wrestling is based on psychology and crowd manipulation, WWE's higher-ups often show a surprising lack of awareness for how the average human thinks. WhatCulture alone have spent a lot of time talking about the infamous Matt and Jeff Hardy 2009 feud, which cut uncomfortably close to the bone. Matt was understandably uncomfortable about having to claim responsibility for the real-life house fire that claimed the life of Jeff's dog, Jack. But it gets worse when you learn how WWE tried to use the tragedy to motivate Jeff for a promo. As reported by Sportskeeda, Jeff revealed on the podcast Wrestling with Freddie that WWE commissioned a video package which prominently featured Jeff's deceased pet. As Jeff put it, company officials told him this was done to get Jeff fired up. Itself an unfortunate choice of words, but it had the exact opposite effect. Because of course it did. Rather than filling Jeff with righteous fury, seeing a video of his beloved former pet just bummed him out. It beggars belief that WWE genuinely thought showing Jeff a video of his recently killed dog would do anything other than depress him. Idiots. Number 9. WWE humiliates, bully and fire Mickie James based on her looks. The Mickie James debacle has long been an exemplar of why the Divas division is seen as a low point in WWE history. The legendary Mickie James spent months being bullied by Michelle McCool and Layla over her weight, as the duo tormented Mickie for reasons that were patently false to anyone with a functioning set of eyes. Everyone involved hated the angle, surprise surprise, but it just kept going. Even worse, the heels wound up winning the feud, with Mickie's sole title victory over Michelle McCool being rendered redundant when the latter won the belt back less than a month later. Mickie would later be fired less than 2 months after dropping the belt, eventually revealing that she was told the company was moving the women's division in a new direction. Sadly for women's wrestling, said direction was based solely on how many fashion models John Laurinaitis could get his skeevy little hands on. Number 8. WWE reference Reid Flair's suicide without telling his immediate family. Staying on the subject of atrocious Divas division angles, we come to one of the most jaw-droppingly callous segments in WWE history. In 2015, Paige and Charlotte were embroiled in a feud for the Divas title, as the company finally injected the floundering division with much-needed talent. Unfortunately, the feud ended up being overwhelmed by the inexplicable decision to have Paige reference the tragic suicide of Reid Flair, Charlotte's brother. As eye-poppingly insensitive as the comment was, you'd expect WWE to have received permission from Reid's immediate family to use his suicide as storyline fodder, or at the very least to get in touch with them ahead of time to inform them Reid's death would be referred to on Raw. Sadly, that was just not the case. Reid's mother, Elizabeth, found out about the comment the same time as the rest of the bloody world, and let her feelings be known in a tweet that blasted the company as lazy and disrespectful. Suicide is an extraordinarily heavy subject for a wrestling program to deal with, and WWE using it for cheap heat shows the rotten state the company was in at the time. Number 7. The locker room turn on Hassan for disrespecting Eddie Guerrero even though Eddie didn't care. While WWE has had its share of outcasts over the years, few have amassed the staggering level of vitriol Muhammad Hassan accumulated in the 8 months he spent on the company roster. The nadir came when Hassan, under the advice of Kurt Angle, asked Eddie Guerrero to stop using the camel clutch, as it was Hassan's finisher. Unfortunately, the young rookie didn't realize Eddie's father was the man who had actually invented this move. While the aftermath of the incident is well known, Hassan wound up paying a $2,000 bar tab for the entire locker room as punishment. What usually gets swept under the rug is that Eddie himself wasn't angered by Muhammad's blunder at all. Per Fightful, Hassan explained that Eddie himself was extremely professional over the whole situation, as he realized the younger wrestler had been put in a bad spot through Kurt's bogus advice. He said the conversation ended with a hug, which makes the rest of the locker room's subsequent overreaction even more jarring. Hassan may have been removed from TV following his infamous terrorist angle with The Undertaker, but that was only the final nail in the coffin his peers had built for him. Number 6. Lita was told she'd be fired if she didn't take part in the live sex celebration. When Bret Hart described professional wrestling in his biography as two athletes telling a story with their bodies, I doubt he had Lita and Edge's notorious live sex celebration in mind. Both performers have since gone on record to describe their understandable discomfort with the segment, but unsurprisingly it was the female half of the duo who came under the most fire from WWE management for airing her displeasure at the time. Back in 2021, Lita claimed on her Twitch channel that Vince McMahon was hot to trot for the segment, and that saying no was just not an option. When Lita voiced her trepidation at the idea of going all the way on live television, she was threatened with her release. Vince clearly has all the moral conscience of an abattoir, and if his employees didn't follow his every whim he had and likely still has, he had and likely still has no problem sending them straight into the disassembly line. Was this the most shocking segment in Monday Night Raw history? If not, what was? Let me know in the comment section down below. Number 5. DX mocked Chris Masters for losing weight after he went to rehab. When Chris Masters took time off TV in 2006, he returned looking notably leaner than before his absence. This fact didn't go unnoticed by Triple H, who upon hearing Chris was thinking about writing a book on nutrition, smarmily replied, "Really, what's it gonna be called? How to lose 50 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks?" In an interview with Power Slam magazine, Masters took the high road and said Triple H was an equal opportunity ballbuster. Unfortunately, as interviewer Greg Lambert noted, given the events surrounding the younger wrestler's leave of absence, Triple H's joke came across as extremely tone deaf. Chris Masters had actually been in rehab, struggling to overcome an addiction to prescription pills that had ballooned to the point he was taking 75 painkillers a day. Masters explained that the weight loss came from the 2 miles of running he did every day as part of his therapy, and the relative lack of weight training that came with giving his overstressed muscles a break. Given that WWE had just implemented the wellness policy earlier that year, openly mocking one of its beneficiaries on live television wasn't the smartest move Triple H could have made. Number 4. Natalya gets squashed on pay-per-view on her birthday. On the surface, having Natalya be Rhea Ripley's opponent at Night of Champions was a sound decision. Natalya may not have had a hope of winning, but WWE giving her a chance to strut her stuff on a big stage seemed like a nice birthday present for one of the company's longest-serving performers. Then the match happened, and well, the following is a blow-by-blow account of the entire bout. Number 1. Rhea attacks Natalya while the latter is distracted by Dominic. Number 2. Rhea boots Natalya out the ring. Number 3. Rhea slams Natalya into an announce table. Number 4. Rhea slams Natalya into an announce table again. Number 5. Rhea slams Natalya into an announce table again. Number 6. Rhea throws Natalya into the ring steps. Number 7. Rhea throws Natalya into another set of ring steps. Number 8. Rhea rolls Natalya back into the ring. Number 9. Rhea headbutts Natalya. Number 10. Rhea hits the riptide and pins Natalya. And there you have it, a simple 10-step 70-second guide on how to give a 16-year company veteran the worst birthday ever. Number 3. The British Bulldog has his already ruined back slammed into dog turds to pop the boss. The British Bulldog's final run in WWE was a sad sight to see. Prior to leaving the company following the Montreal Screwjob, Bulldog had been in the form of his life. He'd spent the previous year having absolute bangers with legendary workers like Owen and Bret Hart, but he returned to WWE in 1999 a shell of his former self. Tragically, while working in WCW, the British Bulldog suffered a horrendous spinal injury that put him in the hospital for 6 months. Even worse, it kick-started an addiction to painkillers and morphine in the lead up to his sudden death in 2002. Knowing the state Bulldog's ravaged back was in, it's even harder to watch the ill-advised segments where Davey Boy was slammed back first into a pile of dog poop. According to longtime WWE staffer Bruce Pritchard, the only reason this angle happened was because in Vince McMahon's mind, there's nothing funnier than dog crap. Watching the British Bulldog taking back bumps during this period, knowing the state his body was in and where it would ultimately lead, is already uncomfortable. Watching him be humiliated at the same time because of his a-hole boss is infuriating. Number 2. Shawn Michaels beats the British Bulldog in his hometown in front of his dying sister. It cannot be overstated what an utter prick Shawn Michaels was in the 90s. From sleeping with his co-worker's girlfriend to acting like a prima donna in and outside of the ring, Michaels' reputation for obnoxious behavior was well earned. Sadly, one evening in Britain saw the superstar's natural selfishness transmogrify into something truly evil. The British Bulldog was all set to defend his European Championship against Shawn at one night only, a pay-per-view held in Bulldog's home country of Britain. Having been told he was going over, Davey Boy dedicated the match to his sister Tracy, hoping to give her something to cheer about while she was battling cancer that would ultimately claim her life. Unfortunately, Shawn had other ideas. Shawn convinced WWE higher-ups to change plans and put the belt on him. The allure of becoming a Grand Slam champion and screwing over his perennial nemesis Bret Hart, Bulldog's brother-in-law, proving too great a temptation for the egomaniacal wrestler to resist. WWE, as they did all too often with Shawn, relented, and the end result was one of the most depressing conclusions in pay-per-view history. Number 1. $5,000 is deemed too expensive to safeguard Owen Hart's life. As detailed by John Pollock, WWE got into an argument with rigger Joe Branham about the cost of the stunt that ultimately cost Owen Hart his life at Over the Edge 1999. Due to WWE's insistence in allowing a quick release function, so Owen could take a comedy pratfall immediately after landing in the ring, Branham quoted them at $5,000. WWE responded by firing Branham and doing the stunt on the cheap, leading to the fateful events of May 23, 1999. $5,000 was seen as too much to protect Owen Hart, one of the greatest, most loved wrestlers to ever enter the business. $5,000 was seen as too much to ensure Owen's wife would be able to grow old with her husband, and their children would grow up with their father. The death of Owen Hart is the greatest tragedy to ever occur in a WWE ring. The fact that it was also the most easily avoidable makes it all the more devastating. Taking on a world champion and putting in a hell of a shift within a year of debuting in the industry, having a frightening out-of-body experience just as a landmark match is about to go down, and suffering a career-shortening injury midway through one of your greatest showings are just a few of the secret truths that make these 10 matches even more majestic. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestling matches more impressive when you know the truth. Number 10, Anna Jay challenged for the AEW Women's Championship just over a year since officially debuting. She may be currently nursing an unfortunate shoulder injury that will see the star sitting on the sidelines from upwards of 6 months, but it's worth remembering that Anna Jay is still in the formative stages of her wrestling career. She's still only 22, highlighting just how quickly the AEW talent has progressed in a frankly minuscule amount of time as a professional wrestler. Many forget that Jay only made her official debut as a performer in September 2019. Jay was officially signed by AEW in April 2020. And just to add to her already impressive rise to prominence, number 99 challenged for the AEW Women's Championship against Hikaru Shida on Dynamite in November 2020, just over a year on from her first ever match. The star's performance in said title bout would have you believe she's been doing this for years, when in reality we've merely scratched the surface when it comes to this talent of tomorrow. Number 9, Ric Flair was at an all-time confidence low, WrestleMania X8. It may seem utterly ridiculous when said aloud, but there was a time when the Nature Boy Ric Flair was suffering a crisis of confidence. Coming into WrestleMania X8, the wrestling legend was a far cry from the performer he'd been during his earlier prime as part of WCW and the WWF. Gone was the swagger and belief that he was the very best and the man. Instead, comments from folks behind his back alluding to him being too old had gotten to the former WCW World Champion. But the likes of Triple H and The Undertaker were having none of it. This was Ric Pissin' Flair, man! Reminding Nate just who the hell he was. Taker helped revive the old Nature Boy within the Sky Dome, as the two put together a masterclass on the grandest stage of them all. On the back of their classic, Flair thanked the dead man for restoring his confidence, and a grand final WWE run in between the ropes was well and truly underway. And nope, we're not going to talk about TNA. Number 8, Eric Young tore his ACL, then wrestled one of the best matches of his career, Impact Wrestling. Injuries happen in the world of professional wrestling. There's just no way around that fact. Often these debilitating problems quite clearly have an impact on the quality of the performances going down in the ring. A torn pectoral is known to make things difficult at the best of times after all. Not in the case of Eric Young though. In what was James Storm's 1000th match, Young brushed off the no doubt excruciating issue to go again against Eddie Edwards a few days later. On top of this, Young also took part in a Hardcore War 8-man match during these tapings, all while carrying an injury which would have left most other performers on a couch with their feet up. Young would also confess that his bout against Edwards was one of his finest showings, claiming he would put the match wrestled on one good leg against anything any other company is producing at this moment in time. Number 7, Melina and Michelle McCool wrestle a banger in a difficult time. Night of Champions 2009. If you needed a reminder of just how far women's wrestling has come in the last decade or so, here we have the time Michelle McCool and Melina were on the receiving end of some backstage heat after apparently doing too much. The match in question went down at Night of Champions 2009, and things got off to an explosive start as McCool drop-kicked Melina off the apron as she attempted her signature split entrance. This, along with an awesome DDT on the barricade spot, made for a compelling bout, but also invited cited some unnecessary criticism from some in the back. Knowing this would have likely been the case coming into the contest, the two kept their plans a secret and only discussed the bout with their producer, known advocate of women's wrestling, Fit Finlay. Then, the day after the two had put on a hell of a clash, an agent inevitably confronted them and claimed that it looked too good, telling them you can't do that. Their awesome work did not go unnoticed by their peers, however, with Chris Jericho claiming that it was up to the rest of the locker room to match their stellar efforts. Well said, Le Champion. Number 6, Kenny Omega worked an entire tournament with a broken heel. G1 Climax 2018. They're struggling your way through a contest on the back of picking up an injury during the battle. Hell, there's even wrestling a few matches in quick succession while suffering through the pain. But then there's Kenny Omega's insistence on bumping through an entire tournament on a bad foot. More specifically, the then IWGP World Heavyweight Champion was dealing with a fracture in his heel, picked up during his defense of the title against Cody Rhodes at the G1 Special a few weeks before the G1 Climax got underway. But there were more matches to be had, and Omega did not let the fact that he could barely walk get in the way of his work. The cleaner would wrestle a total of 9 epic singles matches over the course of the tournament in the end, a feat made that much more impressive by the fact that he was somehow able to execute his insanely athletic style on a heel ready to explode. Number 5, Nick Jackson worked through a terrible flu in a Texas street fight, AEW Dynamite. We've all had those days at work when you feel as though you're well and truly at death's door. Yet for most of us, those long days don't involve throwing our bodies through the air or being hit by steel trays, unless you're a ridiculously athletic cafeteria lady. Sadly, that wasn't the case for Nick Jackson though, as the young buck found himself having to go to war with Santana and Ortiz in a Texas street fight alongside his brother in December 2019 on Dynamite, all whilst trying to overcome a serious bout of the flu. According to Matt Jackson's Twitter account, Nick laid on the floor in our locker room all day, then popped up and put in that gutsy performance tonight. Watching the young bucks throw caution to the wind is jaw-dropping at the best of times, but witnessing Nick crash through tables and execute the 450 necessary for a Meltzer driver on some steel chairs, with the knowledge of the star being curled up in a ball for much of the day beforehand, is impressive even for him. Number 4, Bret Hart was suffering from the flu and still wrestled 2 matches, SummerSlam 1993. 1993 was an interesting time for Bret the Hitman Hart. Fresh from winning the WWE Championship and enjoying his first reign with the company's top title, the Canadian legend dropped the title to Yokozuna before Hulk Hogan wrestled it away from the new champ moments after his WrestleMania 9 victory. This was supposed to set up a match between Hogan and Hart at SummerSlam, but the Hulkster instead opted to drop the belt to Yokozuna at King of the Ring. All this chaos ultimately pushed Hart in another direction, with the newly crowned King of the Ring now feuding with Jerry Lawler in the lead up to the summer show. Hart then proved just how valuable he was to Vince McMahon and co. by throwing down with both Doink the Clown and Lawler in 2 classic contests at the Colossal event. Oh, and he wrestled in said back-to-back matches whilst trying to get the better of the dreaded flu. Needless to say, a Hitman at less than 100% was still on a different level than the majority of the roster at the time. Number 3, Stevie Richards gets revenge after Bradshaw's one-night stand actions, SmackDown. Now, you could argue that this match isn't made that much more impressive upon discovering the true reason behind it being booked, but knowing precisely why it and its most memorable moment came about is definitely interesting enough to warrant a place on this list. The time is July 2005, and WWE are just coming off a highly successful night of hardcore action in the form of the first ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view. JBL is facing off against the Blue Meanie on an episode of SmackDown, a match that involves the former WWE champion taking one of the stiffest chair shots to the skull you'll ever see. But why did Stevie Richards get to smash JBL in the noggin with a seat, I hear you ask? Well, at the aforementioned One Night Stand show, JBL had opted to shoot bust open said Meanie after he got wind of the latter referring to him as a bully. Imagine that. So to keep the BWO from kicking up a fuss about their boys' treatment, JBL was booked to lose against the blue-haired Meanie on SmackDown via Batista distraction. taking some vicious steel to the skull from a clearly enraged Richards too. Wrestling. Number 2, Will Ospreay and Ricochet did not plan the ropes breaking. WCPW. A wrestling ring dramatically collapsing out of nowhere has become a surprisingly regular visual in recent times. It's also a stunt that is usually planned in advance, as seen in the case of the legendary Brock Lesnar and Big Show ring-obliterating superplex on SmackDown in 2003. However, what went down in Ricochet and Will Ospreay's True Destiny match back in 2017 was anything but part of the plan. As the pair attempted to execute their trademark springboard flips into always impressive superhero-esque poses, the usually sturdy WCPW top rope came unstuck. This caused the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion to land on his head, but the two quickly responded with a simultaneous boot to their rival's mug. The rest of said match was, contrary to popular belief, completely made up on the fly, with the two innovative high flyers using what remained of their environment, including springboarding from the second rope, to put together a match much better than it had any right to be, given the unforeseen circumstances. Number 1, Daniel Bryan tried to get out of the match, WrestleMania 37. During his most recent run with the company, it's become common knowledge that Daniel Bryan has been thinking more and more about what the future holds for him away from wrestling full-time. He's even confessed as much in various interviews over the last year or so. Yet, seeing Bryan nudged into this year's WrestleMania 37 Universal Championship main event suggested that the star still felt he deserved his place at the top of the card, and the company still saw him as a significant player too. Well, one half of that statement's on the money. Turns out the leader of the Yes movement actually wanted no part of this year's Show of Shows main event. He thought the already planned Edge vs Roman Reigns showdown was big enough, and his inclusion was likely not even needed. On top of this, Bryan revealed in the same BT Sport interview that he had an out-of-body experience just as the Mania 37 three-way started, admitting that he asked himself, "Oh no, is this what it feels like before you die?" However, in true D-Bry fashion, these doubts coming into the show and the odd pre-match detachment still didn't stop him stealing Night 2 as part of a truly epic event closer.
WWE have had plenty of bonkers moments over the years, but as with any good story, it gets even better when you know the context. Like Vince McMahon trying so hard to fart and make Gerald Briscoe sick that he... well, you know the rest. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, and these are 7 WWE moments that are hilarious when you know the truth. Number 7. Ken Shamrock chases Chris Jericho for real. Back in 1999, Chris Jericho was trying to settle into company life when they programmed him with, let's just call him Angry Ken. And Angry Ken did not piss about. He certainly didn't like the, quote, bullshit chops Jericho dished out during some of their early exchanges. According to the then Y2J, Ken folded him up like a deck chair on a house show for chopping him. Later, during a rather creative steel cage segment on SmackDown, Shamrock was booked to chase Jericho up the ramp and out of the arena after nonsensically bending the steel bars and freeing himself. Jericho wrote in one of his books that he stopped sprinting after making it back through the curtain, but when he looked round, he realised one thing with absolute horror. Shamrock was still running, and he was making a beeline straight for him. Apparently, those chops came with multiple receipts. Jericho had to try and calm Ken down and explain that he wouldn't throw any more knife edges out there. Number 6. The real ECW invasion. WWF fans tuning into the In Your House Mind Games pay-per-view on the 22nd of September 1996 couldn't have failed to spot Paul Heyman, the Sandman, and Tommy Dreamer at ringside. Were those ECW stars defecting to Vinnie Mac's corporate nest? Nah, they were just there to promote ECW's first Super Show the following year. Shame nobody told the locker room that. Bruce Pritchard admitted on his podcast that some guys backstage started getting a bit hot when Heyman, Sandman and Dreamer got involved in an early match between Savio Vega and the then Justin Hawk Bradshaw. Pritchard was out in the stands pretending to shoo off the ECW crew at the time, so he had no idea that people were getting legit pissed behind the curtain. Some even wanted to march out in front of the live crowd and beat up the ECW lot. That'd show them for invading WWF's turf, only they hadn't. Not really. It's so funny to think that the actual wrestlers themselves thought Heyman's invasion was a shoot. Number 5. Mean Gene's avoidable F-bomb. Those immortal words from one Mean Gene Okerlund at SummerSlam 1989 will live on forever. His shocked cursing remains one of the biggest botches on WWE pay-per-views to date, and it may never be topped. The beauty of it is that it was never meant to be seen, of course, because those promos weren't filmed live. Again, Bruce Pritchard explained on his pod that the WWF crew laughed their sodding arses off when a SummerSlam sign fell down behind Okerlund, Rick Rude, and Bobby Heenan earlier in the day. Then they moved on quickly and filmed another take for the brief promo. By showtime, though, someone ran the wrong reel. Instead of airing the redo as planned, the production team picked up the outtake and showed that live on air to fans watching at home. They had all day to sort this out, but apparently failed to spot that they had the wrong tape loaded up until it was, too late. As I'm told daily here at WhatCulture, there's something endearing about that level of stupidity. Number 4. Lex Luger's tassels. Let it be known that Curt Hennig didn't stop at one-off ribs. Heading into WrestleMania 9, the WWF put Mr. Perfect together with Lex Luger's new narcissist character on house shows. The theory was that Hennig and Luger would be able to build up some chemistry before the big pay-per-view came around. But Curt, he had other ideas for that live event tour. Lex has admitted in countless shoot interviews that Hennig deliberately pulled one tassel off of his elaborately designed ring gear every single night on the road. That, according to the presentation-obsessed Luger, drove him to the brink of insanity. Big Lex couldn't bear to imagine his expensive gear might look a bit shabby come Mania. It did, at least a little. Look closely at Luger's pre-match pose and you'll see that his trunks look a little threadbare. Curt had been picking off those tassels one by one, and he only did it because he knew Lex would be furious. Better yet, he feigned innocence and apologised every time Luger brought it up. Number 3. Vince McMahon no-sells everything. Behold the peaceful face of Vince McMahon from the 1st of November 2010 episode of Monday Night Raw. On that show, McMahon woke up from a coma and traded some lame jokes about politics with Freddie Prinze Jr. before threatening to run for president. However, that string of skits didn't pass without incident. This is actually a story Rhino once told on Talk Is Jericho years ago. Trips told him backstage one day that he had Prinze Jr. and other extras hold smelling salts underneath Vince's nose throughout filming. When asked what the hell that was about later on, Hunter pretended he didn't have a clue that anyone would do that, but pointed out that McMahon wanted the segment to feel real. Amazingly, Vince didn't react to the salts. He was determined to make it look like he was unconscious and on life support. Because, of course, he was. In other words, the boss was ignoring the smelly stimulant for your viewing pleasure. You're welcome. Number 2. Call Al Snow. Or Val Venus. Al Snow's feud with the Big Boss Man towards the end of 1999 is regularly cited as one of the worst in WWE history. Fans especially hated the Kennel from Hell disaster at Unforgiven, but ask Val Venus and you'll probably find that he despised something else about the Nightmare rivalry. Before finding out that Boss Man had killed his pet dog and cooked Little Pepper, Al pleaded with anyone who knew anything about the Chihuahua to get in touch. At one point, he even held up a missing posters that included a phone number on the bottom. Yeah, that was Val's real home number. Venus didn't know anything about this until he started fielding hundreds of calls back home from concerned wrestling fans. Things got so bad that he had to disconnect his landline and get a new number the next day. As soon as Val had hung up one annoying call, his phone would ring again and again and again. It was never ending. That is some serious ribbing right there. Number 1. Michael Cole's soaking wet initiation. Michael Cole must have wondered what he was doing with his life back in 1997. The one-time war correspondent had traded grim battlegrounds for the wacky world of pro wrestling, but it took some time for the roster to warm up to him. During one of his very first appearances as a backstage interviewer, Owen Hart, who else, seized the opportunity to rib Cole like only he could. Moments before the cameras went live, Hart poured a litre of Coca-Cola all over Michael's suit and trousers. Left with no time to change or really compose himself whatsoever, Cole had to conduct Owen's promo like nothing had happened. Somehow, he managed it, which probably earned him some respect from the crew. But it gets even funnier. After dousing the newbie suit, Owen began referring to Cole as Michael Kohler. To his credit, Cole was able to laugh about this shortly afterwards and told WWE's official website later that he's just glad nobody else picked up on that nickname.
From alarmingly inexperienced rookies smashing it within a year, to powering through soul-crushing illness to deliver the goods. Each of these matches become that bit more jaw-dropping once you know the bona fide truth. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 more wrestling matches even more impressive when you know the truth. Number 10, The Undertaker sends Mankind to hell with a broken foot. King of the Ring, 1998. Let's face it, when the words Mankind, Undertaker, and Hell in a Cell are thrown into any wrestling conversation, most fans' minds will jump to the immortal sight of Mick Foley being launched from on top of and straight through the formidable structure. However, one little detail that often finds itself being overlooked when recounting the absolute savage war between these icons of the game is that Mick wasn't the only star who walked out of the match particularly broken. In Taker's case, though, he actually walked into the contest nursing a nasty injury. Feeling the pain of a broken foot in the lead up to the contest, Taker managed to mask the undoubted anguish that must have been biting away at him all the way through the hellacious battle. He may not have gone all the way to hell like Foley did, but Taker still proved he was a tough son of a gun all the same. Number 9, Main Event is forced into a sprint by Okada vs. Skull, All In 2018. Long before AEW had successfully become one of the hottest brands in wrestling today, the likes of Cody Rhodes and Nick and Matt Jackson all decided to promote an event which would almost single-handedly change the industry forever. But as is usually the case when it comes to this sort of high-pressure live pay-per-view scenario, timing issues ultimately led to a few enforced changes on the night. All in all, the event itself had run over by 14 minutes by the time the main event was set to go down, with many pointing to Marty Scurll and Kazuchika Okada's semi-main event battle as being the match which caused the issue. Yet regardless of where the finger was pointed, this eventually meant that the Young Bucks and Kota Ibushi versus Bandido, Rey Fenix, and Rey Mysterio was cut short, dropping from what should have been a near 30-minute banger to an 11-minute sprint. But what a sprint it was! And perhaps more impressive than the high-paced nature of the contest was the fact that the finish was executed mere seconds before the show went off the air. How's that for timing? Number 8, Bret Hart carries a wasted British Bulldog in Wembley, SummerSlam 1992. There's absolutely no questioning the fact that the British Bulldog's defining moment as an in-ring performer came in the middle of Wembley Stadium in the main event of SummerSlam 1992. However, were it not for a certain Hitman, who knows what would have been the real talking point coming out of the Summer Spectacular. With Davey Boy Smith said to have been high as a kite for much of the time coming into the contest, it didn't take long for the star to admit to Bret mid-match that he completely forgot the layout of the contest. Without missing a beat though, the Hitman simply replied, "Davey, just listen to me, I'll carry you." Would this genuine classic have earned its untouchable status without Hart being forced to guide his fellow Hart family member through the chaos? We'll never know, but we do know that it's about damn time we had another euphoric night in Wembley like this. Number 7, Bron Breakker challenges for NXT Gold after wrestling debut a year earlier. Halloween Havoc 2021. Say what you want about the newly revamped NXT 2.0, but the newest face to pop up in the brand's main event scene has been handled and presented to near perfection since breaking out onto the show. Since making his professional wrestling debut in October 2020, Bronson Rechsteiner, never hurts to have Steiner blood coursing through your veins I suppose, has spent a few months on the indies before being signed by WWE in February. He's since gone on to wrestle on TV just 6 times as of recording, with the last of that series of contests being a beautifully brutal fight over the NXT Championship at Halloween Havoc versus Tommaso Ciampa. Professional athlete background or not, Breakker's rise has been nothing short of phenomenal. Number 6, Adam Cole is drafted in for SmackDown at the last minute. SmackDown 2019. Where there is chaos, there also tends to be opportunity. Never was that more true than during the period which saw a whole host of stars from Raw and SmackDown controversially grounded in Saudi Arabia on the back of 2019's Crown Jewel event. event. With the Blue Show still set to go down the next night, Vince McMahon was forced to resort to desperate measures to ensure fans actually had a show to watch. The solution? Draft in son-in-law Triple H's gang of crowd-popping NXT studs. Of the many stars who invaded Friday Night SmackDown, it has to be said that Adam Cole in particular must have been feeling the pressure, throwing down with all-round legend Daniel Bryan in the night's main event. Making matters worse, the NXT champion had only been informed of his need to be at that arena a few hours earlier. Cole then resorted to lacing his boots up on the flight over, and was ultimately told upon arrival that he'd be defending his title in an eventual banger with D-Bry there and then. What a hero! Number 5, The Rock and John Cena both battled through injury and sickness, WrestleMania 29. Few would be quick to claim that the two Titanic stars that met in the twice-in-a-lifetime main event at WrestleMania 29 put on an in-ring clinic that night. But let it never be said that John Cena and The Rock didn't put their bodies through the ringer to bring this highly anticipated rematch to life. On top of nursing himself back to health after what was no doubt a largely uncomfortable week of reported food poisoning, the leader of the C Nation also battled on with a broken thumb in his Rocky Rumble. But while Cena may have been feeling a little worse for wear heading into this bout, the Great One definitely felt more of the pain coming out of it, tearing his abdomen wall and his abductor muscles off the bone mid-match. The People's Champion had a monumental task in simply getting this one over the line. Number 4, CM Punk works a Raw gem despite having the flu. Raw 2013. Here's that moment when CM Punk showed the face that runs the place that it is actually possible to tear the house down whilst your insides are doing the very same thing. In arguably the best of their many bona fide classics together, Punk was in no mood to sit back and watch somebody else worm their way towards the top of the card as the show of shows drew near. So instead of taking a night off to recharge his batteries and overcome a debilitating bout of flu, the voice of the voiceless decided to work through his illness on February 23rd's edition of Raw in 2013. Along with whacking out an extremely rare pile driver mid-match, the bitter enemies were able to produce a match of the year contender as Cena earned the right to battle The Rock on the grandest stage. The fact Punk held up his side of the bargain whilst feeling like his head was being put through a cheese grater only adds more luster to the classic. Number 3, Becky Lynch finds out about Bianca Belair the night before. SummerSlam 2021. Of the many big moments the likes of WWE and AEW have thrown at their fans since live attendance once again started to become a thing from July onwards, few elicited such a spine-tingling immediate response than the sight of the man finally coming back around at SummerSlam 2021. Becky Lynch's music erupting into Allegiant Stadium as Carmella looks set to battle Bianca Belair over the SmackDown Women's Championship was up there with the purest unexpected occurrences of modern times. But few realize how late in the day this development actually was. As Lynch revealed herself to BT Sport, "I got a call on Monday. SummerSlam was on Saturday. That there was a possibility that I was needed to fill in for a match. But I didn't know entirely until Friday. That means the man wasn't given the official green light that she'd be stepping back in front of 50,000 strong until a literal day before her showing. Sure, the match itself was brief. But to rock up to a stadium and breeze your way through a show-stopping moment like this, after giving birth no less, like you haven't skipped a beat, and after only being informed of your official appearance late in the day is pretty damn cool. Number 2, Bryce Remsburg and Eddie Kingston knew about Brody Lee's condition. Full Gear 2020. The legacy of the Dark Order leader will continue to be felt for as long as his family and friends continue to pay tribute to their fallen father, husband, and pal. But for a time, Brody's condition wasn't made public knowledge, with only a close circle of people within the business knowing the severity of the position he found himself in. Two of those people were none other than AEW's Bryce Remsburg and Eddie Kingston, a pair who were coincidentally involved in the Full Gear 2020 main event. With this knowledge at the forefront of their minds coming into Kingston's I Quit AEW Championship match against Jon Moxley at the event, the two decided to take a moment to dedicate the contest to Brody and Larry Sweeney. The fact both men then kept their composure and brilliantly played their part in putting on this instant classic in such heartbreaking circumstances is a testament to both men's professionalism and love for their friend. Number 1, Kenny Omega helps deliver a classic with battered shoulders. Full Gear 2021. And this year's iteration of the AEW staple once again possessed a main event made a little bit more impressive once you discover the real truth behind the contest. With much of the story heading into this long-awaited showdown between the Cleaner and the Hangman centering around whether Adam Page would finally be able to win the big one, a lot of the attention wasn't actually on the Best Bout machine for a change. But even though though Hangman's feat of lifting the AEW World Championship once and for all is certainly the headline story of the match and night, it's worth taking a moment to salute the fact that Kenny Omega was working with a rather broken body in said epic, accumulating significant damage to his shoulders over the years. Omega is said to not be able to lift any heavy weights due to their overall weakness. But the AEW top guy has revealed to Dave Meltzer that this, along with serious vertigo on occasion resulting in the ring spinning, doesn't get in the way of his working of top-class matches. In case you've needed a reminder, Kenny Omega is no mortal man, folks.